who was originally going to hold the first expedition, tragically died. So Bruce has been chosen to basically take over his position. And I think when it gets a little bit closer to the end of the year, I'm going to try to write him a detailed letter and find out what's going on with the trip. I think basically it boils down to funding. He's trying to get finances for the nuclear ship they need to use to get to that region. And also what's interesting is for the first time the solar warming, and I don't want to say global warming because I think that's BS, but the solar warming that's going on right now is providing for the first availability to travel to some of these regions because the ice is breaking up. And actually, the fabled Northwest Passage across Canada is actually now being navigated for the first time. So.
Exactly. Yeah, that's interesting. Definitely. But okay, but there is no, at this point, as you know, there's no timeline on this. I think they're going to hire if I remember correctly, a Russian ship. I think.
Yes, that's correct. I'm really not sure of all the details. I don't know him personally. I just have met him through emails and things like that. But
Sure.
As soon as I know, I'm going to let everybody at my blog know, and you as well. So I'm just trying to figure out the pieces of the puzzle like you guys.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. Nice initiative. Yeah, hopefully it will be an event that do take place, and who knows? I mean, it seems very difficult at this point, at least, to be able to locate yourself up there. I mean, the question is how far in you can go with the boat, and what happens after that. If you have to.
Yeah, walk. I mean, they're trying to triangulate from previous expeditions in the region where there's basically a bunch of pictures from people who explored the region that Bruce wants to go to, where it looked like there was mountain ranges in the background, and they kind of stopped their journey because they couldn't really, they didn't think they could hike that kind of mountainous terrain. It looked pretty treacherous to them. And they looked on the satellite system, and lo and behold, there's no mountains there. So, it brings a lot of interesting questions up, like if the area is guarded by some kind of hologram, or if there's some kind of preventative measures being taken for people to explore those regions. You have We have satellite pictures of Mars and, of the planets of the solar system, very detailed. And of Earth, of course, you have Google Earth. You can see everywhere basically on the grid. And there are no really detailed pictures of the poles of our planet available to the public. And I find that to be very, very bizarre. Almost, a little bit too bizarre for my liking. I don't really understand why something so simple as a map of the globe would be withheld from civilians,
That's right. I do know that they even they do cancel out what they call sensitive areas. I mean, even sometimes when they're taking aerial photos for postcards and stuff like that, the military actually goes in and removes some of the stuff.
Oh, sure. There's all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, you got Mel's Hole in Washington. That was supposedly an entranceway to Hollow Earth. I mean, there's a few that are a little ridiculous. I think the pyramids were mentioned as one, and Solomon's Mines. Even Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, but you're right, they do block these out, these images on Google Earth. It makes you wonder what they're trying to hide. Obviously, civilians are going to be blocked by, from certain information that's just completely classified, but sure. I just wonder why they block it out at all,
Exactly. I want to go back again and talk a little bit about your video production. Have you doing anything like that previously? Have you studied anything like that? What got you into it, so to speak?
No, interestingly enough, I've always been a musician all my life, just focused on the arts and have been, really a fan and had a love for movies, but I never did any video editing. I really have to say the program I used to do the editing, Sony Vegas 7.0, it's extremely intuitive, and if you look at my Hollow Earth video, it's very, very primitive. It's just a bunch of single pictures and me narrating that, even the microphone quality I was using back then was not very good. And I just sort of built on my knowledge of the system, and I upgraded my studio a little bit over time. And now I incorporate, really full moving videos and, sort of fractal artwork and all kinds of things incorporated into it now with multiple musical lines edited in, as well as my voiceovers. So I just basically have added layers of complexity as I've gone forward, and I plan on continuing that trend as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The work does evolve. You can definitely see that. Definitely. You mentioned 9/11, of course, as a kind of a spawning point or a point where things began. How long after the event itself did you actually begin to reading more about it or become more interested in that subject?
Well, not to sound pompous, but honestly, as soon as I saw the towers drop, at that moment when I saw it on TV, it was basically like a shattering of my reality. I wasn't really open with it to my friends or people I was close to at the time, but as things developed and more people started coming forward, I started gaining confidence as to further my research in the field. And all of us in this field of research, like Jake and Todd Campbell from Through the Looking Glass, Hoi Polloi from Sabrina's Journey, Keen from A Keen's Eye, even a Ferris Moon. We're really telling like the most exciting story ever told, in my opinion. When you're born, you're given this finality or brick wall of gnosis. Turn to religion for all your questions concerning the mysteries in God. Never venture down the rabbit hole. Never look towards the great beyond ever. But in this narrative that people in synchro circles delve into, which is very much real in all of our hearts, we really get to see the universe in action. We recognize elaborate patterns in space-time that make the entire creation seem like, one big intelligently guided hologram. And when I say intelligently guided, I'm not suggesting like a singularity or, grumpy old, law-making god of ultimatums that Christians want you to believe in. I'm talking about like a conglomerate of intelligently evolved consciousness that humans are indeed a part of. And, that makes God or the universe conscious of itself. So, in a way, I really feel like we're all a part of this Godhead, and we're very much creational beings. We grow plants, we raise children. Once we realize our potential, that we've only just begun to evolve. We've only sort of embarked on this transformation, this 2001 black monolith evolution. The walls of the matrix start to disintegrate, and we start to actualize and know true freedom. And synchromysticism is just a recognition of the symbol system that's starting to become more and more apparent and more obvious, through our collective consciousness and our experience. And it's kind of a way of just noticing the universe actually has an intelligence, and that we give it that intelligence, because you could almost say that there is two creations. There is one for inanimate objects and one for people or conscious beings to observe the inanimate. And we are part of that latter creation, and it's just so wonderful. It's never ending. It's a fractal loop that will just go on into eternity, and I'm pretty much just cherishing every moment of it, really.
Great. Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Yeah, you can see that in a lot of your videos and, the language you use also. And talking about your videos, your latest one is called Ophiuchus, the Burning Tower and the Doppelganger Universe. And you talked about a pretty interesting idea about the time loop scenario, I guess we could say, that things are, happening over and over and over again, like the rise and fall of, civilization, or even the rise and fall of man. And you explored the idea of, catastrophe a little bit, and you mentioned nuclear holocaust or human utopia being the choice. Tell us about that idea a little bit. I find that interesting.
Sure. Basically, the Burning Tower was a Nostradamus prophecy. It's not, his alone. It's a very ancient prophecy. It's happened numerous times over history. The Tower of Babel being one that comes to mind, and one of the more popular ones. And that was basically when the gods, or, ETs or extraterrestrials, or whoever you want to define as gods at the time, saw human beings were banding together, and they were trying to build a tower to compete with the gods, or to, become more evolved and to become more intelligent. And what did they do in this story? They confused everybody's language. They set them, scattering in their ways into the forest, and basically confused everybody. And the Burning Tower is a motif that goes on throughout history. You see it everywhere. I mean, even in the South Park episode that was just out concerning Imagination Land, or I don't know if you watched that show.
Oh, yeah, someone sent me that link. Yeah, I actually watched it. Yeah.
The symbolism is incredible in that episode. And, the makers of South Park aren't a part of this grand conspiracy. It just so happens that they're, tapped into this sort of collective pop culture consciousness, because that's what they do for their job. They basically read people's, pop culture intentions. And there are things in that episode, like there was a bee, there was Anubis, pushing the Snarf from the Thundercats down a slide, and the Thundercats are representative of the Israelites and the Exodus movement. And there was also a part in that episode where they showed the Burning Tower. And this, obviously ties back to 9/11, and it seems like every time that there's an incident with the tower coming down, it's sort of like the beginning point in which the culture has a choice either to destroy itself via, nuclear destruction, or to create a utopia. And I say that because the Atlanteans, or civilizations that came before us in ancient Babylon, obviously aren't here anymore. They may have had the similar choice. And when I put Ophiuchus into the category, they were going through the same galactic alignment that we are about to go through right now in 2012. So they had an equally interesting choice that we are trying to make for ourselves right now. And obviously they may have chose for the nuclear annihilation. Well, not chose for it, but that may have gone down in their civilization. Exactly.
Yeah, there seems to be evidence for it. We had Joseph Farrell on a few weeks ago. We talked about actually previous civilizations, or even the ones that we still can recall and bring up some form of remnants from. Speaking of civilizations from Mesopotamia and Sumeria and all that. Speaking about war in the heavens.
When I was I'm sorry to interrupt, but when I was researching it, they had a lot of sites came up with sort of meteorite explosion impacts around Scandinavia, around your region, actually.
Yeah.
And the northeastern coastline of the United States. And I was thinking, meteorite explosions and these kind of half-lives or radioactive elements that they're finding in the Earth, could it have been such a stretch for there to be an actual war between, ancient civilization in our past? And I think that it is very feasible that it happened before. And I wonder if they maybe had the internet or they had movies and they sort of had this kind of choice to make in their portion of the time loop that we have to make right now. And as time goes on and there's more civilizations that fail through this kind of repeating loop, the Akashic records, or whatever you want to call them, sort of build up, and the civilizations of future times get to use those Akashic records to try to avoid the catastrophe. They have more of a more vast library of psychokinetic books to read, if you want to put it that way.
Interesting. And the question is if there actually is something external going on or something external happening, meaning that someone actually is intervening in the process, and when humanity reaches a certain level, I've heard researchers refer to it like this, that the experiment, in quotes, actually started over or, restarted, basically. And
that's what's so interesting. Exactly. I don't want to keep requoting The Matrix, but that's basically what the theme was in the second one in the series. The architect told Neo basically that this is the sixth revision of The Matrix, and that they destroyed it, several times before.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like it's the ultimate metaphor. That movie really is genius for its metaphor, because now we see fiction blurring with reality with events like 9/11 and all of these things coming together. It's just really, again, mind blowing.
Absolutely, definitely. You mentioned The Matrix, of course, a big movie in that sense that seemed to also have actually awakened a lot of people, at least got them to think in a new way. Let's talk a little bit about film. You quite prominently featured, in your videos. You have a lot of film footage from different films. Mention a few of your favorites. You mentioned Matrix, of course, and 2001. But are there anyone up there on your list more?
I like all of Terry Gilliam's stuff. I love Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Baron Munchausen. I like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of my favorites as well. I'm really easy to please, actually. I like all movies, sci-fi movies. A lot of the stuff I do for my videos are mainly because they have to do with the point I'm trying to make. I like horror movies as well that have to do with sort of these Stargate themes like Event Horizon. And actually, have you seen the movie Sunshine? I spoke about it in one of my videos. It's quite interesting, the symbolism in that one.
Definitely, yeah.
Basically, when I was doing my Project Lucifer research, and, I'm by no means a physicist, so I started asking around to see if this was even theoretically possible. A lot of people were commenting to me on my site, if this was feasible to make a fusion reaction with the Cassini satellite, which is housing all the plutonium. Basically there's a lot of unknown variables involved with that story. With 72 pounds of plutonium, it's the equivalent of a 600 kiloton explosion. In comparison, it's Nagasaki, I think, was 7 kilograms, which is, basically, if the Saturn explosion, if the Cassini satellite is in fact housing that amount of plutonium, would create temperatures at around 100 million degrees Kelvin because of the high density of the point of detonation. And also, Saturn is experiencing some changes in its atmosphere. I think it has increased of 30% of its surface pressure in the last few years, and that's just completely amazing, because if that happened on Earth,